Hello everyone, my name is Dusk and welcome to another episode of Shock's Video Guide. In this guide we're going to talk basically primarily about the Queen, and this is going to be one of the first guides in a series of guides that we're just going to focus on specific units, their uses in all the matchups, and basically their abilities, what they're good against, what they're bad against, etc. And so let's move on quite quickly. First of all, we're going to take a look at the basic stats of the Queen. The Queen's got high health. It's got 175 health, which for 150 minerals is one of the highest health to mineral cost ratio units in the game. This is made better by the fact that it can transfuse, which boosts the health by 125. So when your Queen's health is low, it'll give it 125 health. Basically, it's not going to increase past the unit's current health, but it's basically just a 125 health point heal. Now, additionally, it's got 1 armor, which makes it quite tanky. So units in Starcraft basically have 0 armor or 1 armor. There are really few units that have above that. I think Battlecruiser is like one of the only units that has 3 armor. And so most of the units are at 0 armor or 1 armor, and 1 armor is actually a pretty big deal. It takes a lot of damage from Zealots, Zerglings, and Marines, better than most normal units, and plus the fact that it's psionic. And so psionic units are actually extremely good. They're like one of the best unit type armor types to have, and so what I mean by that is the only thing that does bonus damage against Psionic is the Ghost Snipe after the recent patch, and so basically if you're light, it's going to take bonus damage against things that do bonus damage against light. If you're armored, it's going to take bonus damage against things that do armor damage. But if you're not anything, if you're something weird like Psionic or not anything like a Baneling or a Ghost, then you don't take bonus damage against anything. So ideally you don't want a unit type, and that's why Archons basically take no bonus damage against any single attack, which makes them one of the tankiest units in the game, and that's because their only classification is Psionic right now, and there's basically no abilities or units that do bonus damage against Psionic, except for the Ghost Snipe, but the Ghost Snipe can't snipe Archons. Anyway, it's got 2 attacks. Both of them are considered ranged attacks, and so when you upgrade the Zerg's ranged attack, it basically increases the Queen's attack. Now obviously you're not going to be using Queens to do most of your damage, so it doesn't really matter too much anyway, but it's got a low ground damage attack and a medium high anti-air attack. And so basically the low ground attack isn't really meant to do that much. It's meant to kill workers early on and meant to do small amounts of damage against unupgraded units, but basically it's there just to have an attack, and the air attack is actually what makes the Queen pretty special. There's actually no unit in the game that has siege range anti-air attack that is available at tier 1. So what I mean by siege range is it's got 7 range, and so if you think about it like this, a Banshee costs I believe 125 or 150 minerals and 100 gas. Now it almost doesn't kill a Queen, so a Banshee will beat a Queen 1v1, but it'll survive with like 20 health or so. Now a Queen only costs 150 minerals, and it's really low on the tech tree, so basically the Queen is really good against air units, assuming that you have enough of them. Now, one last thing I want to talk about is it's got a really slow movement speed. It's only got 1.6 on creep and about 0.8 off creep or something really slow like that. It's the slowest unit off creep in the game, and so that's why you generally want to keep it on creep when you're doing anything. Using it off creep is only for very specialized circumstances, and the Queen's basically useless off creep because it's got a really low melee range, and it's not going to be able to reach a lot of units. Moving on to our next slide, we have, so basically, we have a few uses for the Queen. Its 3 abilities are Transfusion, Inject Larvae, and Spread Creep. Now, Transfusion, as I said before, heals 125 health to anything biological. And so because all Zerg units and buildings are biological, it can heal anything. But the thing is that it heals 125 and it costs 50 energy. And so 50 energy, a Queen's energy is actually quite valuable. You don't want to be using that on Zerglings because Zerglings only have a maximum of 35 health, and so you're basically going to bring the Zergling up to 35 health, and then you realize you just wasted transfusion. So basically, good transfusion targets are Roaches, other Queens, Mutalisks, Ultralisks, Broodlords, sometimes Hydralisks, but generally those few high health units, anything above 125 health or around there basically, and buildings. And so if you have a Terran or a Protoss player trying to snipe your technology, trying to snipe that Spire, committing all their units to attack it, then you can just heal it up, and then they're like, oh, I just wasted all my units and I didn't even kill the Spire. And so it's very useful for healing buildings. Now, what I mean by boost production by 150% is that the Queen can transfuse, and so, or not transfuse, inject larvae. And so your hatchery will slowly regain larvae. I'm not sure what the frequency is, but it basically slowly regains larvae and has a maximum of 3. When you use inject larvae, every 40 seconds, and this is 40 Starcraft seconds, which is faster than real life seconds. It's about 36% faster. But every 40 Starcraft seconds, you're going to get 4 more larvae, and this roughly accounts for boosting the production by 150%. And so if you count the normal amount of larvae produced by hatchery as 1x, when you constantly inject it with larvae, you're going to get about 2.5x larvae. And so that's actually one of the reasons why Zerg can produce so much, and the main difference between StarCraft 2 and Brood War is that the production of Zerg is boosted so much by the fact that you can get a queen that more than doubles the production of a hatchery, and it costs basically half of a hatchery. And so one of those things that you guys really should practice and use, and you guys can practice injecting larvae through one of our other videos called the Zerg Queen Injection Guide. Now, the final ability has is spread creep, and basically spreading creep is obviously extremely important. It gives you vision of everywhere you spread creep, so it's kind of like a map hack. All the creep tumors are invisible, so the other players have to get detection and kill it. And what it does is it uses 25 energy to put down a creep tumor that slowly spreads creep around it, and then the creep tumors can propagate indefinitely until the host creep tumor is killed. And so on creep, all Zerg units receive 30% bonus movement speed except for air units, workers, and Hydralisks. Hydralisks actually receive, and queens I guess, Hydralisks actually receive 50% bonus movement speed, so it's massive, and queens receive a much higher bonus. I think it's around 50 as well. And so those are the two units that basically benefit most from creep: Hydralisks and queens. Air units and drones obviously aren't affected. And so the thing about creep is, what you can think about is like this. First of all, in order for them to fight you, they're gonna have to go on your creep, and so you see their exact army composition. And so the further spread out it is, the earlier you're gonna see their composition, and the earlier you can deal with it. Additionally, because all your units move faster on creep, you can think about it, the speed bonus, as bonus damage and bonus health, because you can run away, retreat from engagements a lot faster, you can engage engagements a lot faster, and because your Zerglings are faster on creep, you can get more surface area, which equals more damage. And so what this means in the long run is that you're going to fight with better efficiency, aka higher DPS, because you're going to be able to get that concave faster or more surface area. And then if you think the engagement is unfavorable for you, you can retreat faster, retaining more of your health. So basically it gives you higher damage, more health, if you want to think about it like that. It's not just a speed movement bonus, and you can get to your bases a lot faster, defend drops or whatever. Now we're gonna talk a little bit about the ulterior uses of the queen. Now, besides the 3 main uses with the 3 abilities, there are a lot of other uses too, and one of the things I've seen a lot of players do late game is when they make their Broodlord, Infestor, Corruptor army, which is essentially the best late game army against Terran. Against Protoss, I think it's Broodlord, Infestor, Roach. They bring along queens, and that's because Broodlords move extremely slow. They're not affected by creep, so it doesn't really matter. And then they bring along queens with it, and then the queens, because they move extremely slow as well, it doesn't really matter that their entire army moves that slow, because that is basically one of the strongest armies in the game. And what they do is basically store up energy on their queen, and then they transfuse their Broodlords. Because Broodlords have 225 health, they can take transfusions pretty well. Basically, the higher the health it is, the easier it is to transfuse without wasting any excess healing. And so that just makes it like the kind of a Zerg medevac that boosts health instead of a little bit at a time, does it in big chunks. And this basically helps massively in battles, just because if you keep transfusing, they're gonna focus down they're gonna use their Vikings to focus down your Broodlord, and you can just keep transfusing, keep your Broodlords alive, and that'll give you the ground support to basically win major battles if you do it correctly. Now, additionally, you can block ramps. This is especially useful in Zerg versus Zerg. It takes 2 queens to block ramps, and so what players usually do is they build 2 queens, and then sometimes they build a 3rd one to just constantly inject. But if you're doing 1-base stuff in Zerg versus Zerg, they build 2 queens, bring it to the ramp, and then they spread creep closer to the ramp, and they build a spine crawler. And when you have that 2 queens and the spine crawler, the queens are basically going to be accumulating energy at the ramp, so they'll be able to transfuse each other. And plus the fact that they can have the spine crawler there providing additional DPS allows them to basically hold a ramp extremely well against Zerglings. Now, if they have roaches or something, it's going to be a little bit different. But generally in Zerg vs Zerg, a lot of the earlier 1-base stuff occurs with Zerglings, and so having queens to block the ramp really allows you to hide your tech, which otherwise in Zerg vs Zerg is extremely hard to do because you can just run a Zergling and see everything. Now finally, one of the other things that I see a lot of players, they don't do this a lot, is take damage and stall. So let's say that you're playing Zerg vs Terran or Zerg vs Protoss, and they send in 2 Marines and you don't want to spend the Spine Crawler because they can just run away their Marines, spend the money to make a Spine Crawler or make Zerglings. What you can actually do is just make the Queen, just use your Queen to attack, and then possibly just make 1 set of Zerglings. So you have 2 Marines coming. You're basically going to have to make at least 2 sets of Zerglings to kill it if the Terran kites. And so what you can do is just take your Queen, have it go in, attack, so both the Marines are attacking the Queen, and then have 1 set of Zerglings attack it. And this is the same for Zealots and Stalker. So basically any kind of low early form aggression, they send small numbers of units in, you can just go and take your Queen and just take damage. As long as your Queen doesn't die, you're basically giving yourself time and outputting DPS in order to stall for things such as Zerglings or Spine Crawlers to finish. Additionally, when a Protoss or Terran finishes a bunker, and you try to break it at your natural, if they bunkered your natural, they cannoned your natural, what you want to do is move your Queen in first and then move in your Zerglings. What this is going to do is basically it's going to force the bunker and photon cannon to attack you, because bunkers and photon cannons, if not microed, will always attack the first thing in range and keep attacking it until it dies. So what you want to do is move your Queen into range, let it take damage, and then let your Zerglings basically deal out the DPS so the bunker isn't attacking your Zerglings, and then when the Queen's about to die, you move it out of range. And so that's one of the other uses of the Queen. Alright, so if we take a look at this game, it's basically the Zerg player, we're looking at the Zerg player's perspective, and he's got really nice creep spread, and in turn this creep spread gives him really nice vision for Terran drops. And so he didn't go Mutalisk this game, he went Leg Infestor, so it makes it a little bit more difficult to deal drops, as Terran can just pick up, but he's able to prevent at least the majority of the drone damage he would have otherwise sustained, and so he's able to see that the Terran player is coming in with his Marine tank, and then the Zerg player is able to just deal with wherever the medevac is going, just to keep track of it so he doesn't drop into your mineral line, for example, without any Zerglings being present. And so that's basically the importance of creep spread. It gives you all the map vision you want, so long as you're diligent about it, and it basically forces the Terran player to scan, because Terran players generally just don't like fighting on creep because of the bonus movement speed, causing all your units to be a lot more effective. So it basically forces the opponent to scan. They're hesitant to go on creep, and you can see their army composition extreme. Now in this next clip, you're going to see Banshees attack a Queen. This is a game of Shox vs Gosusanke, and basically the Queen in this purpose, because the Terran player caught Shox off guard, the Queen's main purpose here is just to take damage and die and give time for Shox to get Mutalisks or Spore Crawlers. And this is the same case in Terran vs Zerg and Protoss vs Zerg, where you basically, if you have Mutalisk coming or if you have a Spore Crawler on the way, just take damage and die. Because a Banshee's going to outrun your Queen, and so unless you're running your Queen towards a Spore Crawler or another Queen to transfuse, if you have none of that nearby, don't ever run with your Queen, because you're just going to do less damage to the Banshee, and it's going to die anyway. Banshee will always be the Queen. Now, 2 Banshees versus 2 Queens is a little bit different scenario, because if the Queens have transfusion, then 2 Queens will win, and so that's why Queens get more and more powerful against air units as they get in number. Now against Protoss, it takes 4 Phoenixes to pick up a Queen and kill it in 1 Gravitron lift, so that's generally a lot of Protoss players like to do that. But otherwise they like to go with a Void Ray, and then they like to rally Phoenixes with that Void Ray. And so what that basically is going to do is just let the Void Ray do damage while the Phoenixes disable Queens. And so in that case, what your Queen's main task is basically to stall for your Infestors to come out or Mutalisks, but otherwise it's to stall so that your Spore Crawlers can get up. And then once the Spore Crawler's up, Void Ray Phoenix Army basically cannot engage, as a Void Ray under level 1 charge basically doesn't do any damage to a Spore Crawler, and Phoenixes obviously cannot pick up within Spore Crawler range without sustaining damage. And against Mutalisks, generally Queens aren't very good. You need a combination of Queens and Spores to get by for the first 2 minutes, and then defensive-wise, and then if you want to push out, you have to get either Infestors or Hydralisks or a greater number of Mutalisks. Corruptors are generally not worth it because the enemy Zerg player can just transition into Roaches, and you have useless Corruptors that you spend money on. So if you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to leave it in the section below. We don't have a replay for this just because it's a series of clips. Be sure to follow us on Facebook or Twitter to get the latest updates from Shox Video Guides. We like to release free videos periodically, just so everyone can get a taste of what our guide is like. My name is Dusk, and I'll see you guys later.